So like I said, hopefully you're in the right spot. And so today we're going to be doing observability administration, and this is a certification course. So we're going to be together for the next 3 hours. Going to be a fun 3 hours. And here's the agenda. It's pretty accurate. So we're going to have a discussion about AWS observability, more really about observability, period, and then AWS observability. And here with the top 3 items, we actually have labs that are going to correspond to those. So we have our AWS observability setup, we have Kubernetes setup that we're going to do together, and then we have modern application observability setup. So we're going to be setting up a bunch of different things today, which I think you'll enjoy. It makes it more interactive, more fun. And then we'll do a little summary and a Q&A. So like I said, the beginning's a little slide heavy, but then it does get into those labs, which are going to be like a little more fun. A little promotion for today. So at the end of the day, we will be taking a certification. We have the next 3 hours set aside for us. I know the schedule said 3.5 hours. We're not using that much time at all. Probably 3 hours, maybe 2.5, depending on how things go. But we wanted to reward you. Traditionally, of course, if we were doing this in person, we'd offer you some swag and give you an ill-fitting t-shirt or socks that don't match or something like that. But today we wanted to reward you with some food, which everybody can enjoy. So once you take your certification exam and pass it at the end of today, go ahead and send an email to training@sumologic.com, and we're going to feed you, give you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So take about 48 hours to get to you, but you should have a nice meal for just in time for the weekend. So we wanted to, just encourage you to stick through today. And then we have another promotion going on that you may have seen. If you complete 6 of our certifications, and they do have to be current, so that is kind of a stipulation, we're going to go ahead and ship you the backpack you see on the right-hand side of the screen here for free. So that's certainly an opportunity that you have available to you. I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat as well. And we can give these to you later also. All right, so now let's get into the real meat of the program for today. We've kind of showed you the goodies to keep you entertained, but now let's dive in and really start to talk about it. So our objectives for today, the goal of today's session is to demonstrate how to set up observability solution for monitoring and observing a modern application with its infrastructure to observe a platform and to trace a microservices-based application. So in today's session, what we're going to learn is how to set up the AWS observability solution in your system, utilizing the CloudFormation template, and how to use it efficiently to observe an app at the stack level. So that's one portion of today. Another portion is going to be that Kubernetes and looking at the setup of Kubernetes and using it efficiently for end-to-end observability of the infrastructure. And then we're going to set up tracing, and we're going to utilize OpenTelemetry there and use the ingested data to observe a modern app and drill down into transactions effectively. So that's kind of the plan for today. It's a lot, but it's going to be good today. Good session. So all right, let's just keep going here. And like I said, any questions, throw them in the chat. Tram and myself will help answer them. So observability at a glance. Observability means being able to ask any question you need about your application and how customers are interacting with it. Sumo Logic's observability solution includes capability to observe an app in AWS stacks, observing the platform technology, as well as tracing the microservices-based application and its components. So let's begin with AWS observability solution. Come on, there we go. So modern applications become increasingly complex as they leverage distributed technologies, cloud infrastructure, and container and orchestration tools. In addition to connections between microservices, orchestrators, and underlying cloud resources adds to the growing complexity. Time taken to diagnose or isolate services or resources that might be the immediate cause of reliability issues become the main concern. And there is no tribal knowledge that can help guide the SREs in the right decision. Moreover, monitoring the critical indicators of reliability, such as errors or latencies, is difficult, and in turn makes monitoring the issues more painful. AWS Observability Solution provides a framework to simplify monitoring and troubleshooting of your AWS cloud infrastructure. The Sumo Logic apps for the AWS, there we go. I'm behind on a mouse click here. So the Sumo Logic apps for the AWS Observability solution provide the ability to isolate and solve problems faster with specialized pre-configured dashboards, minimizing the time it takes to get operational and security insights across your AWS infrastructure. Identifying elements that are subject to specific operational issues or security threats and vulnerabilities across your AWS infrastructure. There we go. Behind one slide. Now we're caught up. Using Sumo Logic, the observability solution, you can define and manage an AWS CloudFormation template and use the template as the basis for provisioning stacks into selected target accounts across specified AWS regions. In the template, you'll declare the AWS resources you want to create and configure. We're going to do that as one of the labs utilizing that CloudFormation template. And here we show kind of the steps of using that template. Now, why use a CloudFormation template? We're going to use one, but what's the point of it? What does it do? A template is a declaration of the AWS resources that make up a stack. The template is stored as a text file whose format complies with the JavaScript object notation, or otherwise known as JSON, or YAML standard. And because they're just text files, you can create, edit them in any text editor and manage them in your source control system with the rest of your source code. For more information about those template formats, we have documentation on template formats. And so that's in the documentation. I'll link to it probably later. We'll take a look at that. Now, however, to deploy the AWS observability solution, we're going to use that AWS CloudFormation template. Using the template, we're going to declare the AWS resources we want to create and configure. And we can get rid of creating JSON or YAML text files and managing them. The template automatically is going to set up automated collections of logs and metrics from AWS to Sumo Logic and install out-of-the-box dashboards in Sumo Logic. In the CloudFormation template, you declare an object as a name value pair or a pairing of a name with a set of child objects enclosed. The syntax depends on the format you use. The only required top-level object is the resources object, which must declare at least one resource. Now, what is a stack? So I think I just alluded to one, and we're going to use that terminology. When you use AWS CloudFormation, you're going to work with templates and stacks. You're going to create templates to describe your AWS resources and their properties. Whenever you create a stack, CloudFormation will provide the resources that are described in your template. So what is a stack? A stack is going to be a collection of AWS resources that you manage as a single unit. And in other words, you can create, update, or delete a collection of resources by creating, updating, or deleting stacks. All the resources in a stack are defined by the stack's AWS CloudFormation template. A stack, for instance, can include all the resources required to run a web application, such as the web server, a database, networking rules. If you no longer require that web application, you can simply delete the stack and all the related resources are deleted as well. Now, here are the steps involved in the process of setting up the AWS observability solution. First, we're going to open the doc page and click on the URL to invoke the AWS console. And we're going to do this through a lab guide that we'll provide shortly, probably about 15 minutes or so. So we're going to open that doc page. We're going to click on the URL to invoke the AWS console. We're going to log into the AWS console with our credentials, and hopefully we have those for today. We're going to specify the AWS account alias. Then we're going to provide values to set up the AWS observability apps and alerts, specify the AWS CloudWatch metric sources and the AWS ALB log source. Next, we need to set up the parameters for AWS CloudTrail source, AWS Lambda CloudWatch logs, and the root cause explorer sources if those are required. Finally, we can create or click create stack, and that will create the AWS stack with all the resources we specified in the template. We're then going to confirm and ensure the data being reflected in the dashboards that can be shared. So making sure that everything does get to the right place. All right, we're going to do our activity now. So let's just dive in here. Let's do it. So I'm going to go ahead and share the credentials. I'm also, in the meantime, going to go ahead and share the lab guide we're going to use. So the credentials you see on the screen, let's go ahead and utilize those to get into the Sumo Logic training environment. And let me just find the, here it is. And I've also attached the lab guide as a PDF into the chat. And let me go ahead and put these credentials in the chat as well. So if you have not logged in with us before, we use this set of credentials or similar sets. Let me just paste this in real fast. There we go. There's those credentials as well. So we're going to log into service.sumologic.com. We're going to use the credentials of training plus admin number at sumologic.com. And the password we're going to use for today is going to be Sumo 2021 ! So go ahead and log in. If you have any problems logging in, let us know. It's probably gonna be a typo, but if you do, let us know. Thank you for putting in that number that you're using. Not required, but I see some of you have been through this before, so you kind of know the drill, which is it's very funny to see. So I'll just give everybody another moment or two, and then also go ahead and open up that lab guide as well. So we're going to have 2 pieces of information. Actually, the third one, we're going to have the Sumo instance, certainly. We're going to have our lab guide, and then probably the Zoom meeting as well. So lots on your screen for right now. But just going to give everybody another moment or two. As Scott mentioned, thank you, Scott. We do want to make sure that we're using training plus admin number. For some of our other classes, we use training plus analyst number, which is okay, but for today's exercise, we need that admin right. So just go ahead and make sure you're doing that. All right, looks like many of you are logged in. I don't see anyone screaming for help. Please do if you need it, but that's a good sign. So let me go ahead and just kind of catch up with you here. So I think I'm logged in already, but let me just make sure I am still. Okay, so I'm logged in and you are as well. And then I have my trusty lab guide right here. I'm just gonna move it to another tab, just another window, just to get it out of the way. Now, before we get into the lab guide, although you can, but we're going to do this together. So lab 0 we just did. So lab 0 was just logging into the system, kind of an important step, but that's what lab 0 is all about. Now we're going to start to do lab 1, but before we do, or as we're doing it, I want to walk through just a couple considerations, things to keep in mind. And specifically around prerequisites. So there are a couple prerequisites to today. Hopefully you kind of knew about them before this moment, but even if you didn't, we'll get through it together. So some of the prerequisites are having Sumo Logic metrics. The AWS Observability solution leverages both logs and metrics to provide comprehensive monitoring and troubleshooting of the AWS cloud infrastructure. If you don't have metrics, certainly you can reach out to a Sumo Logic account rep and they can assist you. And for today, it's fine. Certainly collectors and sources. So we're going to go over that process of setting them up or utilizing them. The AWS Observability solution is going to rely on an installed collector with a host metrics source on each of your AWS EC2 hosts. The solution relies upon host metrics collection rather than AWS CloudWatch EC2 metrics, because EC2 metrics from CloudWatch have high latency and can increase the cost of your AWS account. Host metrics have the advantage of being near zero latency and also at a lower cost. That process also is very thoroughly documented. And I think I'll share a little link here as well. Let me go ahead and throw a link into the chat just to. Sorry, collectors and sources, role capabilities. So you're going to want to make sure that your Sumo Logic role, the user you're utilizing, and the one we're using today, of course, has the proper rights, but you need to be able to manage field extraction rules. You need to be able to view fields, view extraction rules, manage collectors, manage fields, manage metrics rules, and manage monitors. Not necessarily that you remember every single role capability, but as a reminder, you may not have the access you need in order to do what you need to do.
Hey Josh, we have 2 questions in the chat. If you can see them,
Yeah, I'll address them a little bit later.
Okay.
Um, and then also we need the Sumo Logic access ID and key. So we're going to go ahead and set that up shortly. But when you run the CloudFormation template that deploys the solution, that access ID and key are going to be required essentially to enable the Sumo Logic API. And so you're going to want to make sure that you have those capabilities. In today's class, you will, but once again, in your private or personal environment, you may not. And so just want to remind you of those. Also, of course, I was going to say obvious, and nothing's really obvious, but you're also going to need AWS credentials. So for those, you will need your own. We will not be providing you AWS credentials. And so if you don't have them, you'll still be able to enjoy today's session, just might not be able to kind of play along with that portion of the lab. All right. Let's see, anything else on this screen? All right, let's keep going here. So before you deploy, as mentioned, some of the prerequisites that we were talking about. So those credentials are going to be needed, the AWS region, the deployment name, and the API keys, as well as the ID. And we're going to get all this information together. So I'm not expecting you to know all this information. Some of it, but not all of it. So we'll go through that together. All right, so why don't we go ahead and now start to use the lab guide and start to go ahead and work our way through it. So in lab 1, we're going to deploy the AWS Observability solution. As mentioned, there's those prerequisites listed in the lab guide. So the collectors, the role capabilities, really kind of what I just showed you on a slide. The same information is in there, which is good because we'll need it. Now, as it mentions, before we begin the lab, we want to keep the following details handy. And so what we need are a few different pieces of information. We need those AWS credentials. We need that AWS region. We need the deployment name, and we need the API keys. And I'm going to show you how to do those right now. So to create the access keys, which are the API keys, so the access ID and the access key pair, what we're going to go ahead and do is within Sumo Logic, a couple different ways to do this, but this is the way I'm going to point you to, is if you go down to the bottom left to your user, it should say training admin 91 whatever, or something else, of course. Then go ahead and go to preferences. There's going to be a bunch of information, not a bunch, a few pieces of information we're going to need in here. The first is, in kind of no particular order, you don't really have to copy it, just know that you can find it in here, is the organization ID. We're going to utilize that in just a few moments. And then we're also going to need to utilize the access ID and key pair. That can be created or done by clicking on the add access key. The name you can leave, you do have to put something, so just whatever, something, it doesn't really matter. And then click create key. And we're going to be provided with the access ID and an access key. And we'll go through those steps again. So we're a lot of little steps in here. Now, the first step, the most, I guess it's considered the most important step, is the configuration, is linking to the doc guide. So let me go ahead and put that in here. It's well, actually, you have it in your lab guide, but let me go ahead and just paste it in. Is we want to point you to this before you deploy. And then specifically what we want to do is we want to, under deployment options, we want to utilize the AWS CloudFormation template. So I can also put just the direct link to it, which is probably a little bit easier. Let me just paste that into the chat. So we're going to go ahead and utilize the CloudFormation template. And as it describes, we're really just going to go through the steps that on the link that I just pasted. It's in the lab guide. We're going to do it together. So, we'll do hand holding, but this is what we're about to run through. So let's kind of start to do it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on this URL right here. And what this is going to invoke, or should invoke, is my AWS account. Let me go ahead and just log in. I don't know why it kicked me out here. I guess just because I'm doing it live and just bad luck, but I was logged in just a few moments ago. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and log into my Amazon account. So if you don't have an Amazon account, you can just go ahead and just watch for this portion. The next two labs you will be able to participate in, so you won't lose out entirely today. And okay, cool. So I'm logged in. So what I'm logged into now is the CloudFormation template and the ability to create that stack that I alluded to. And to create the stack, it's really fill in the blanks in a kind of, I don't know if I would say easy way necessarily, but more straightforward. So what we're going to do now is in the URL that we clicked on, we're going to go ahead and create a stack. So let's go ahead and do so. First thing we're going to provide is a stack name. For today, I'd like you to use something that is fairly familiar to you, because we're going to look for this stack in Sumo shortly, and we want to make sure we find it. So I'm going to use stack name. I'm going to use JB, and I'm going to use, I don't know, 0929. I think that's today's date. So I'm going to use those letters and numbers just so that I can recognize it. I'm going to write that down because I probably will forget what I used. As it says, no dashes, excuse me, letters, numbers, and dashes, but nothing else. So it's just going to be a common kind of familiar name. The next step is going to be filling in the parameters. And this is where we're going to start to fill in that information that's going to be important from Sumo logic. So we're going to go ahead and enter the deployment name first. Now, if we don't know our deployment name, and I don't really expect you to, I'd be, well, no, actually I take that back. Many of you probably do know your deployment name, but what we can do is if we're not familiar with it, we can go ahead and utilize this link here. Now, in this case, I just realized we're all going to be using the same deployment. So we're all using US1 because we're using a training account. So you actually don't, can just specify in here US1. Yeah, so assuming you're using the Sumo Logic test account, US1 will be accurate. Next, we're going to put in that access ID and access key pair, that pair that we found when we went to the add access key. So I have those still up. If you don't, you can just re-add them. Having more than one access key is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and take this access ID, and I'm going to paste it into my CloudFormation template. And then I'm going to grab that access key, which is a lot longer, and paste that into the CloudFormation template. So we should have our stack name. We should have our deployment name, which is in this case, just US1. We should have our access ID and access key, which should be different than what I have. You should have your own unique ones. And now we need the organization ID. And the organization ID, actually, since once again, we're using standard accounts, it's going to be this ID right here, but I'm going to paste it in the chat just in case you can't find it or you need it later. And so we're going to take this 12-digit number, whatever, and paste that into the organization ID. All right, so now we have the top portion completed. Now we're going to, a lot of the rest, we're going to keep the defaults, but let's go ahead and just make sure the defaults are good and explain what the defaults are. This option here, I would encourage you to use. So when the stack is deleted, it can delete Sumo Logic resources, which we'd encourage you to do, especially for testing. So that way, if you delete it in one spot, it deletes it in the other. And then line number 2 here, the AWS account alias, we want to go ahead and put something in there. I'd encourage probably the similar stack name that you used earlier. So just something that's kind of sort of unique. Don't include, we found uppercase and special characters can be a little bit of an issue. So go ahead and make sure that you're using just letters and numbers. For those of you that needed access or help getting to that stack configuration screen, I just went ahead and pasted the link in the chat. All right, now the other options in here, we're really going to pretty much stick with what's in there, but like I said earlier, let's just kind of go through what else is in here. So step 3 here, this is a big one for us. Do we want to install the AWS Observability apps and alerts? Yes, we do. That's sort of the whole reason we're here today, but we could decide not to if we didn't want to install those, or maybe they were installed already. We didn't want to overwrite them, but for today, we certainly do want to install those. Let's see, what else can we, a lot of the rest we can leave. Let's see, for the CloudWatch, we're just going to select none. So for this number 4, we can select none. And everything else we're pretty much going to leave as is. Let me just confirm in the lab guide. Yeah, everything else we really can leave as is. Oh, there is the portion about, let's see, the existing, even in step 14, we can skip that. We can just do none. We don't have to do the source API URL. So we're going to go ahead and step, where are we now? I'm on step 14. All right, so I'm just going to leave everything else as is. I think we're going to be okay in here. It does want us to enable the ALB. So that's going to be in number 5. Yeah, all these should be set up by default. Yeah, we should be good to go here. So what I'm going to do is, assuming I'm ready to go here, I'm going to go ahead and just check the 2 boxes. So check the box that allows acknowledging that I'm creating a new resource and that I'm creating or utilizing a capability auto expand feature. And I'm going to click create stack. And I'm going to cross my fingers. What's going to happen now is the stack should be created. This is not going to be immediate. It's going to take a while. Could take up to 10 minutes. And that's fine. We have other things we can go to and do in the meantime, but I just want to make sure that we're up to this step. It is possible this creation may not work. Typically due to typos, and admittedly so myself, but it is possible something just goes a little flaky here, but let's run it and see how we do. So hopefully you're up to this step of running the stack and creating it. And I'm kind of, like I said earlier, kind of tap dancing. We're seeing the creation in progress. We can go to stack info and we can start to see what's going on. It will take a few seconds. Here we go. Now it's starting to do stuff. It's going to do it in kind of reverse chronological order. So at the top will be the most recent thing it's working on. So right now it's trying to create these common resources. Just keep refreshing a little bit here just to let it do its thing. All right, let's see where we're at here. So yeah, it says it can take up to about 10 minutes. I'm gonna go back to the slide deck just to kind of keep me honest, make sure that I hit everything I wanted to. I think I did, but so while that stack is being created. So back to the deck. But these are the steps we just kind of did. So walking through them. A little late in hindsight since we already did these steps, but certainly these should be familiar to what you just did. Yeah, no reason to look at those same slides again if we just did those items. Now, the step that we're waiting for is step number 10. Because what I want to do next is I want to actually see my data in Sumo Logic, but I can't do that until the data is just a little more kind of complete. So let's refresh. It's creating more common resources. And hopefully yours is running. If you're having issues, let us know. Kind of hard to troubleshoot for each individual user, but if we can, we're happy to try to help. I was hoping this would get a little further along. It's coming. It's coming. Now let's see. I just want to. What we can do also, we might as well take a look at this next step. Let's show you where in Sumo Logic we're going to go next. So like I said, this is occurring. As you can see, it's still adding more things and it's going to take still more time. But ultimately what we want to do once this is done is we'll want to go back into Sumo Logic. Because what should occur now, if everything worked properly, is we should see our AWS and Sumo Logic. That was kind of the whole point of today, or this exercise, and I hope I relayed that properly. So now we should be able to, and once again, it's still working, so I'm kind of lightly tap dancing here, continuing to, but what we should see is once we go back into Sumo Logic and go to New, we're going to go to Explore. And what we should see if we go to the AWS Observability view, and I'm going to do these steps again in probably about 5-10 minutes, is we should start to see our account showing up here. So I should start to see JB 0929 showing up. Now, once again, the process is still running, so it's a little bit early. So I'm probably not going to see that for another 5-10 minutes, but that is the goal of this exercise. And of course, this is the slowest it's ever run, but that's just doing it live, bad luck. Let me see. So it's still going, it's still creating. And as you see, it's giving steps. These are some other ones that I've created in the past. This one didn't go so great. These did go well. So it's just, yeah, it just takes some time. Yeah, all right. Thank you, Jamie, for confirming. So at least it's not just me. And I know it's not just me, but it's still good to hear somebody else having not an issue, but that it is taking a little bit. But it will complete. Yes, Sean, rollback failed is the worst thing to see. What you'll find out is if, here's an example right there. Sometimes what it does is, so what it's trying to do is it's now trying to set up properly. And if it does, and all is good, create complete. If it doesn't, it's going to roll back. And so it's going to basically kind of uninstall everything you did. And it's going to give you some indication of what went wrong, but then you're going to have to start to really troubleshoot and figure out. And this is all more AWS troubleshooting. But it should give you some indication. So like, here's the one I did, I guess last week or the week before. It's starting to give me an indication of it didn't just die or fail, but it failed because there was some issue with deleting this common S3 bucket. Now, why is it having an issue with that? Well, that's kind of another story. But that's what it should give us some indication of what went wrong. So mine's still going. Yep, still going. But let's I don't want to jinx it. So go back in there. Okay, cool. So it's still going. Let's see if I have any data in here yet. I don't think so. I think it's still going to be a touch early for data. Yeah, still a few moments early. Now, something else we're going to be able to do or should do, and this is in the lab as well, is we can also go to the collection screen, because what we should see is this data now being collected. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go to the black bar on the far left, go to manage data, and go to collection. And what we should see, it should be one of the first few in here. We should see AWS-observability whatever name you just used. So for example, I see, what do I see in here? I see here's my AWS observability JB0929, the one I'm creating. Now it's not fully done yet. It is even possible that it might roll back. It might get to this step, realize I put a typo and roll back and actually delete the whole thing. But at least I'm starting to see it in there. So I see that the connection is established. I see it's sending data to Sumo, which is good. And hopefully one of you guys, are one of these individuals. Now let's go back to Explore. I just want to see if it's data's there yet. I'm being a little bit antsy with it, but just refresh. Yeah, it's still taking a few moments here. It does take a little bit. But that's the goal. And then once the data is in there, then we can start to utilize it. So even while we're just waiting here, we can look at some other data. So for example, let's take a look at, let's see, I just want to find one that works. This is a lab environment, so some of this is kind of fake data, but we can just go straight to prod. And what we're seeing under prod is we're going to start to see information about AWS in Sumo Logic. So seeing information about where did users log in from, resource activity, I mean, just graphs on graphs on graphs, network load balancing, and so on. And then we can go deeper. So it's more exciting to see it with your own stuff, not just this demo data we have, but the result is kind of the same experience. So let's see, explore. Still chugging along. Let's see, is it still going? Yeah, it's still going. So that's good. So let's see. I just want to see if we can do something else while we're waiting. I don't want to tie up too much time just sitting here, but it is kind of the point of the lab. So let's give it another moment or two. And time-wise, we've allocated for sitting here, so we'll still be able to make up time later. Really just want this to show up, and then I'll be considered satisfied. So we're doing that explore. Oh, here we go. It's starting to, not mine, but somebody else's 666 is starting to come in. So once again, when we go to new and explore, we want to make sure that we explore by AWS Observability. We do have other views here. And this is an observability class, but for right now, this is the one we're specifying. We have a Kubernetes view, and we might look at that in a moment. We have real user monitoring, RUM, which is a newer feature that we just launched. So many different views into the system. So new Explorer. I'm going to just I'm just going to leverage this one that's in there right now. So this one, I assume this is one of ours or one of yours. If it's not, that's fine. But what we're starting to see in here is the data loaded in. Now it's still loading, so that's why there may not be some panels completely full yet. Hey Phil, thank you. But we are seeing information. So we're seeing information about his this environment, this RDS usage and things like that. We can go deeper. By default, we're put into this kind of account, an account overview, but we can go ahead and look deeper at each service. If we want to look at DynamoDB information, assuming there is DynamoDB information to look at, and it's loaded, once again, it's still loading, we can start to dig in there. It's still loading. The timing on this is a little, again, it's still coming in. I'm just being too impatient. I'm just going to give it one more try. I know we'll probably continue, and then we can come back later and see the data actually in there, just kind of proof of concept for those of you that don't believe me. So, explore AWS. Yep, still just have Phil in there. Let me go ahead and check my stack just to make sure I don't have any. Yeah, it's still going. So that's good. It also makes me more nervous that something at the end might die, but the process is working. Sumo's working, and that all is good. So let's see. Yeah, and Phil's going to play around with it, that one, and actually maybe clean some of it up. So we're just using that as an example. No pressure to make sure the data is accurate or anything. And we should be create complete. We should be good to go now. Let's try this one more time. So new explore by AWS Observability. Where is it? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if we can hunt it down real fast. Let me just make sure my cloud formation is complete. Yeah, that's all good. Stack is all complete. Why don't I have data? And if anybody else does have data, that would be just nice to hear. Why is it not showing up? That's very strange. It should. I feel confident I did everything pretty correct. I see my data in here. Oh, that's not me. Here's me. I see some data in there. Yeah, I don't want to waste too much time of me just kind of troubleshooting my own issues. But hopefully you got the gist of it. So I have hopefully you got more than just the gist, but that's what we really want to show is that functionality and how easy it is. Once again, it is a little time consuming because the process does need to run, but the actual steps we did were entering just the account ID, just linking the two accounts together essentially. And that was sufficient enough to get us what we need. So one more check here, and then I'm just moving on. Yeah, it's make sure. Yeah, it's not there yet. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why it's not there. It should be. We saw someone else's, so we're doing something right here. But I'm going to go ahead and continue with the presentation and the class. So let me go back to my slide deck. And so what we saw, the visuals for the slides are give it to you. Of course, we prefer you see it in your own UI, but essentially what we want you to do is then see, oh, actually, hold on, let me do one more thing here. I think I realized what I'm doing wrong. Let me see if I have a dashboard. All right, what we can do here, the system should create these for us as well, and hopefully they're in. And I'm not sure why it's not showing up in the Explorer by, but that's okay. What we should have is if we go to our black bar on the far left, we have this personal folder, this icon right here. By clicking on it, what we should have is we should have an AWS Observability folder created for us with today's date, representing the fact that the data is coming in today. It's taking AWS data and bringing in. And what we should be able to do is open this and then view some of these dashboards. Now I'm feeling, like I said, a little gun shy, but let's give it a try. So this should be my AWS data. And it is. Cool. All right. I feel better. So what you want to do is, I actually had you go into the wrong place. You shouldn't have really gone to the Explore tab. I apologize for that. What we want to do is we want to go to the personal folder. We want to look for AWS Observability, ideally one that we created today. And then we want to open that. And then we should start to see information. May not be all full. My AWS account might not have ALB information. I might not be using EC2s. I might be, so it's possible that that's why there's not data. But that's what we want to do. So we want to go to overview and then open it. And certainly if you are bringing in DynamoDB data, let's see, I'm bringing in ALB data, I should have those panels load as well. There we go. All right, now I'm feeling better. So I apologize. I just had to go into the wrong place. So now we see our AWS data in Sumo Logic. So yay, we did it. And some of you were able to participate in that. So I feel good about it. All right, back to the slides, back to the deck. So then we saw, now why we didn't see it in new, we should have still seen it under the Explore tab. I don't know why not. I'll have to just troubleshoot that. I'm assuming it's just an error I gave you in instructions, but regardless, we were still able to see the graphical information. So the recap of all of that is kind of as such. We utilized the prerequisites, which was making sure that we had the right the credentials, the deployment region. We then configured the CloudFormation template with the account alias. Most of the other stuff we actually just used the defaults. Same with the optional parameters, and then we created and verified. So that's step 4. We got the click the checkbox, we create the stack, and then we confirm the data is reflected in the dashboards. And so we got there. So I feel good about that. So cool. Let's keep rolling here. All right. So for observability at a glance, we saw this slide earlier, and previously we dealt with the AWS application infrastructure. That's what we just did. We took our AWS data and brought it into Sumo Logic, and good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through a similar process for setting up observability for Kubernetes. So you may have AWS, you may have Kubernetes. If you have both, this exercise is helpful. If you're not using Kubernetes, well, it's still going to be helpful to learn how to do it, but may not be as applicable. Let's see, just seeing. James, I see you have an issue there. I'm not quite sure what happened. I would try a different account and probably start over. I'm not quite sure why you got locked out. Possibly somebody else locked you out. So yeah, I apologize for that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and now go through Kubernetes setup. Now, Kubernetes in a multi-cloud environment, what I wanted to do with this slide is I wanted to give a brief, my mouse is so jumpy, just a brief understanding of what Kubernetes is and how it kind of fits in here. Oh, weird issue, James. So the modern apps use microservices architecture and use multi-cloud platform. Each microservice runs in its own container, but managing all these different containers and scaling each up or down to meet customer needs can be challenging to automate. However, the container architecture can add complexity since there are apps and more teams working on it. Kubernetes is a system that automates the deployment, management, scaling, networking, and availability of container-based applications. Kubernetes container orchestration can easily deploy and manage multiple containers, multi-container applications at scale, excuse me. The powerful tool provides a lot of logs and produces a lot of logs and metrics that need to be monitored to keep your app secured and optimized for performance. There's several options for managing and monitoring in a Kubernetes cluster. Sumo Logic has apps for each of these managed Kubernetes services. So whether we're talking about the Amazon, the Elastic Kubernetes service at EKS, the Azure Kubernetes service, Google Cloud Kubernetes Engine, doesn't really matter. We can still support it because we have apps that allow you to choose which you want to use that provide you out of the box open source Kubernetes information, as well as specialized apps for security monitoring. And all these Sumo Logic apps together can help monitor your cluster and improve your performance. Now, as mentioned, Kubernetes generates a lot of data, which you can use to gain insights and improve the performance of your app. Sumo Logic Kubernetes solution is going to provide that end-to-end experience from configuring collection and installing apps all the way down to monitoring, managing, and troubleshooting your Kubernetes environments. There we go. The Kubernetes solution is going to provide visibility into worker nodes, application logs, as well as seamlessly managing the master node control plane, which includes the API server, etcd, the kube system, and worker nodes. With Sumo Logic Kubernetes, you can monitor and troubleshoot container health, replication, load balancing, pod state, hardware resource allocation, a lot you can do in there. And then you can also ingest your full application stack. So for those that are utilizing Kubernetes, like for those that are using AWS, Sumo Logic is going to be a great view into observability. So we're going to go through these steps of how to set this up. Now, before we do, still just another slide or two, and we're just about there. Let's get to, I don't want this slide, I don't want that one, I want this one. Now, for setting up a collection for Kubernetes, you're going to collect a lot of data and metadata from your customers or yourself and activities that are occurring on the site. Your app is going to be containerized and run inside Kubernetes. So all your data is going to live inside the Kubernetes cluster. But when working with Kubernetes, you have another set of data and metadata to work with. Your source for all of this data is Kubernetes itself, which generates its own logs, events, metrics, and security information. Each of these types of data from your app and from Kubernetes itself must be brought into Sumo Logic through various collectors. And collectors are, like we did earlier, bringing that data and collecting it into Sumo Logic. You can set up the configuration, you can set up the collection by configuring two apps. The Sumo Logic Kubernetes app is going to provide service for monitoring the Kubernetes worker nodes. And in conjunction, the Kubernetes, my mouse keeps jumping too quickly. And in conjunction, the Kubernetes control plane app that monitors the master node control plane, including the API server, as well as the worker nodes. So here's what that Kubernetes data pipeline looks like. We're going to collect on the far left, we're going to collect the logs, events, the metrics, the data. We're going to collect that with FluentBit, FluentD, Prometheus, and Falco. Now, the tracing data is going to be collected using OpenTelemetry, and we're going to go through an example of OpenTelemetry next, I believe. Yeah, we do. The collected data stream is then going to be streamed through a centralized FluentD pipeline. And FluentD, these are not Sumo Logic things, these are Kubernetes things. It's going to flow through that, FluentD pipeline for metadata enrichment. So during the collection process, Sumo Logic is going to tag the metadata about containers, pods, nodes, clusters, and identify and organize the service, the namespaces, and the deployment. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is start to do that configuration. Now, we do have some best practices like we saw earlier in that to use Kubernetes logs and metrics effectively, we want to make sure that those fields are going to be defined. We can add fields using key value pairs. Sumo logic can automatically parse some of your Kubernetes data as well if you set those fields up correctly. And then we're going to use that access ID and key. If you don't have it handy from previously, that's fine. We can create a new one, not a big deal. All right, so now let's go ahead and start to participate in the activity. So this is going to be lab number 2. So for lab number 2, we do have, and just in transparency, we do have the steps described for a Mac. So for those of you that are not using Mac, I apologize. In hindsight, they probably should have Windows instructions as well, although I guess you could be using Linux or another OS, but you still should be able to follow along. So once again, if you can't participate in these steps, either due to whatever reason, it's fine. You'll see the visual and still get a good understanding, I hope. All right, so let's do lab 2, step 1. So what we're going to do in step 1 is we're going to go ahead and want to make sure that we have installed Homebrew. And so Homebrew is going to allow us to utilize some tools that are going to be imperative when we're setting up the Kubernetes. So we're going to want to make sure that we have a terminal window open, and we're going to go ahead and paste that command in to go ahead and make sure that we have Homebrew. So once again, please participate. If you don't feel comfortable doing these steps, I get it, I guess. So, feel free to just watch as well. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so now the script is installing Homebrew. And we're going to install a few things here. We're also going to have to install the AWS CLI, the command line interface. So once this is done downloading and installing, which is going to take a few moments, we're going to go on to step 3, which is installing that AWS CLI. So if you already have Homebrew installed, feel free to go ahead and jump to the next step. Jason, so yes, that you can ingest other data if you're not using Kubernetes. So you can use, so there is for AWS EC2. Fargate, I'm not sure. I think so. I want to double check. But those should be documented. And I'll point a link soon that will help with that. All right, so my thing is still going here. I think, yeah. The next step, as mentioned, is going to utilize the brew install AWS CLI. So installing that command line interface. So once you're ready for that step, go ahead and paste that query in or type it in, whichever you prefer. I think it's still going here. Yeah, looks like it is. For the AWS creds, you're going to utilize your own if you have them. So if you don't, so you would use your own, and I can show you how to create them if you don't know how. So it's asking for the AWS Access ID. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jamie. All right, so this is, I think it's still going. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and run that next step anyhow, I think, because I thought I had Brew already installed properly. So I'm going to go ahead and do the next one. So the next one is doing that brew install CLI. Install CLI, AWS CLI. Let's see. Yeah, there it goes. It's going, so it's downloading. All right, so at my first step finished, my second step of installing AWS CLI is running right now. The credentials, so in step 4, you may need the AWS access key and ID. Not may, you will. Those can be found if you go to your AWS account, so we don't provide this to you. But if you go to your AWS account and you go to My Security Credentials, you can choose to create an access key down here. And I'm going to do that just in a moment. So let me just make sure my terminal's doing, still installing, really more upgrading than installing, but I guess kind of same difference. Tap dancing here is again, Looks like it's removing just the old junk. I just ran this recently. I'm surprised there's an update already, but that's okay. It's finished. So now I am done with step 4. Excuse me, step 3. And now I'm going to do step 4, which is going to be utilizing the credentials I was just referring to. So I'm going to type AWS configure. And now I'm going to go ahead and utilize my access key and ID. Now it actually still does have my old access key and ID. I'm going to I'll create a new one. Let's play along together and see how this goes. So I'm going to grab my access key. I'm going to paste it in. I am going to, where'd it go? I'm going to do that again. Wait, where'd my, I don't know where my little window went. Let me go ahead and what was I going to do here? Let me just refresh this. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move this off the screen because I don't want to show my access key. I guess it doesn't matter too much, but I probably shouldn't. So let's go ahead and do this. Why is it not letting me create a new key? What did I do wrong? Create access key. Just 1 second. I had a, what did I do? Create my security credentials. Create access key. Why is it grayed out? Oh, make the old key inactive.
Account set up like ours is you can only have 2 access keys.
Is it T? Okay, I think that's what it is as well here. Let me I think that's exactly what it is. I don't think I typed that incorrectly. Yeah. 3PC 712 FGR. Now I'm just all
Josh, you can just swipe over it and copy it, paste it.
Copy which?
That one, the access ID, right? The key,
oh no,
right?
but I need the key is the problem.
Oh,
I kind of borked myself here a little bit. All right, there we go. Create access key. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. And that's what I wanted to kind of hide just so I don't show my key. But let me go ahead and do this step again. So doing the AWS configure, going ahead and grabbing that access key, pasting it in, going ahead and grabbing my secret key. Trying to be secret with it. And then it doesn't matter. US East 1, we're going to keep that default. We're going to keep that default region, both region name and output format. And I'm just going to close that just to get that secret out of the way. All right. So for going back to our lab guide, we should have now completed step 4, that AWS configure step. And now we're going to go ahead and continue to step 5. And step 5 is is having us verify that the AWS CLI was set up properly. So we're just going to do an AWS S3 LS, and we should see those observability logs. Next, we're going to set up brew install EKS control. Once again, it's going to run, going to take a few moments, let it do its magic. It's now updating. Yeah, so many new versions so quickly. All right, and that was that for that. So that's just a little step there. And let me go ahead and just do one thing. John Meredith has joined us. Not that he deserves a full round of applause for coming in right now, but we do welcome him, and he's going to assist with some questions. So thank you, John. I'm making you a co-host if you didn't know that. So there we go.
got it. Thanks.
Thank you. And we still have Tram there as well. So I've got a couple people helping out on those questions. So now we're going to go ahead and go to step 7. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. We're going to now finally set up Kubernetes. So to set it up, just utilize the brew command, the install, and then Kubernetes-CLI command line interface. And let's go ahead and let that run. That's going to do its thing. It's going to take a few moments, but I think we're kind of used to that for right now. Oh, there it's done already. Cool. And now we're going to go ahead and finally install Helm. That's going to be the last step, is brew install Helm. Once again, I think I already have it installed, so it's probably just going to check to make sure that it's outdated again, putting in the newest version. All right, there we go. So now I have everything set up properly. I hope, but I should. What we're going to do next is we're going to create a cluster. So right now what we have is we have Kubernetes essentially running on our laptop. I have it running on my Mac right now. And I want to now start to make sure that we do something with this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set up a cluster. So in lab 2, step 2, we're going to utilize setting up a cluster. So we can go ahead and take the command that's there if we want and paste it in. We should go ahead and I'd encourage you to edit the cluster name. You should notice it says it's listed as K8 S-training-lab- your initials. I encourage you to put your initials just so it's a little bit easier for you to find. So I'm going to use, go ahead and just put those in. JB 0929, like I was using earlier. And then I'm going to sort of cross my fingers and hit enter, and it should start to set that up. That's going to take a few moments. Let's see. What do I have? I have an extra space in there.
You have an extra space after West 1.
Yeah. Oh, after West 1? Or?
After West 1, looks like you got extra space. Oh, there you go. You got it.
All right. Either way, it's running. So thanks, John. And so now this is going to run like earlier. It's going to take a little while, but going to let it kind of do what it needs to do. So just going to tap dance for a few minutes. If you want to read what it's doing, it's certainly starting to tell us that what is it doing? It's deploying the stack. So like we deployed the stack earlier with AWS using the CloudFormation template, now we're deploying a stack using Kubernetes and using more of the command line interface. Same end result, or not same, similar end result data is in Sumo Logic. Once again, just depends how it gets there. So this is going to take a few moments, as you saw. It does. it does take a little while. So I'm just going to let it go for a few more moments and see if we get anything. All right, and while it's going, yeah, good reminder, John. This does take a little while, so why don't we take a break now? And before we do, let's just kind of see where we're at. I mean, I know where we're at, but just to kind of confirm how we're doing here. So using the agenda as our guide, we did the AWS observability setup already. We're now in the process of doing end-to-end observability with Kubernetes, kind of about halfway there. And then we're going to do the modern application observability setup. So we're making our way through this pretty good. Like I said, let's go ahead and take a break right now. It's a good opportunity. This is still loading, and I want to get a beverage anyhow, so it's a good opportunity. So let me go ahead and I think I have my little break slide here somewhere. If not, I'll just go ahead and use a timer. Yeah, I don't really have one handy. That's no big deal. So why don't we go ahead and take a little break? Let's do a my key there. Let's do 9-minute timer. So we're going to go ahead and take a 9-minute break. There we go. During that time, I'm going to put myself on mute. Like I said, I'm going to probably grab a beverage or something, but feel free to ask questions and we'll go ahead and address those once we get back, or John might even help out during the break time as well. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed the first half. Let's get a little snack. Let's come back. We'll see how Kubernetes is doing, and then we'll continue on. So cool. Thank you, everybody, and talk to you in a few moments. All right, everybody, welcome back from break. Hopefully you had an opportunity to do something fun for the minutes we had apart. Let's see. So my thing is still loading, and I hope yours is as well. Actually, I hope yours is completed, but I imagine it is still running. It does take about probably another 10 minutes even. But I'm going to let it keep loading. No reason to stop it here. I'm going to jump back into the slides just to kind of walk through some. It's really kind of a walkthrough of the lab guide, but just while we're kind of waiting for it here, let me go ahead and just show those slides. So in this activity, as you should be doing right now, we're going to install the tools, we're going to create that cluster, and then we're going to deploy Kubernetes Collection into Sumo Logic. Right now, we're still on step 1 here, but hoping to get to step 2 quickly. With step 1, as we did, we were installing Homebrew, then we were installing the Kubernetes command line tool, and then utilizing the tool that will allow us to create Kubernetes clusters. So I think we got through those steps. Then we installed Homebrew. The command line tool, the Kubernetes app. And then what we're going to do next, and just like I said, waiting just a moment or two further, is to create that custom cluster. So let's see how we're doing here. Still going, of course. Yeah, still chugging, still chugging. And then what we're going to continue to do once we get our data or our everything set up is ultimately we're going to go ahead and deploy the collection into Sumo Logic. And then what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the Kubernetes app. This is going to be really helpful for us because the apps, if you haven't used one of our apps before, this is a great opportunity to experience them, I guess you could say. The apps are going to provide pre-canned queries and dashboards that are going to be helpful to understand our Kubernetes information. So like we did earlier when we set up AWS and then out pop these dashboards showing AWS data and graphs and charts and all that cool stuff, similar idea here. And so that's what we're going to be able to take advantage of out of the box. We're going to want to verify that our collection is in Sumo Logic, so we're not up to that step yet, but that's where we're getting to. So I'm going to go ahead and check on it again. Of course, it's still going here and chugging along. Yeah, still going here. Give it another few moments. I don't want to tie up too much time, but I do want to illustrate or show what we had had for you with the installation. And if any of yours has installed already, that's great. Feel free to go on to the next step, the lab 2, step 3. And while we're waiting, we can go ahead and start to set up. I guess we can wait. What I was going to say is in lab 2, step 3, we will need to go ahead and pull out or access the Sumo access ID and access key again. So if you had those pieces of information earlier when we did the CloudFormation template, great. If you don't, we will need to get those again. So as a reminder, to get those pieces of information, you'll go down to the bottom left to your user, you'll go to preferences, and then you'll go to add access key and just add a new access key. And it's fine if you add an additional 1 or 2 or 10, it doesn't matter. So this should be finishing up pretty soon. Should be finishing up pretty soon. The app catalog, this is where we're going to go into shortly. So if you have not been in here before, good opportunity to just kind of walk through and talk through it. The app catalog here is showing us all these different features or logs or data sources. Even it's broader than just logs. Data sources that allow us to go ahead and utilize and provide these pre-canned reports like I was referring to. So if we want to go ahead and just kind of Kubernetes, this is what we will load. But what it's going to provide us if we go to preview dashboards are these snapshots. So it's going to show us information about Kubernetes, about our clusters, cluster overview, just more graphs on graphs on graphs. Now, typically, this installation process that's still going on, you would typically have your Kubernetes set up already. Oh, let's see, are we getting there? Yeah, we're getting close. You would probably have it set up already. So what we're going to do is basically is add the repo and then do the Helm install and then get that data into Sumo Logic. I want to see, I don't want to cheat just to see if it's, let's do a new window. I know it's still running, but I just want to see if it's like going to let me continue right now, or if I do have to wait a few more moments. Yeah, it's still running. There we go. It's actually all right. It is starting to run, which is good. So what I'm going to do now is, even though it is still running, I'm going to go ahead and work on that step 2 of lab 2 and get my commands ready for the Helm repo that I need to add. So I'm going to highlight this in lab 2, step 2. I really shouldn't do these out of order, but I think I'm still going to be able to make it by. So I want to feel a little adventurous. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to add that Helm repo. Okay, that's cool. I had done it previously, so that's acceptable to me. And then I want to go ahead and set up that Helm upgrade. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this query to fill in my blanks. So I'm going to go ahead and modify the cluster name to be training -lab what am I using? JB0929. I'm going to go ahead and use or put in my access key and ID here. So as I alluded to a few times, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my access key. Just going to call this test. I'm going to grab my access ID and I'm going to go ahead and paste it into where it says access ID. Probably should have done this through a notepad instead of doing it straight in terminal, but the end result should be fine. So there's my ID. Let me grab my key. I paste that in where it says access key. Like I said, I should do this once the screen on the right has finished loading, but I want to just go for it and see what happens. I think it will work anyhow. So I'm going to go ahead and run this Helm upgrade command. I don't know if it liked that or not. I might be doing too much at one time. I might have tried to overdo it a little bit, but let's see. Yeah, that might have been a step too early to do that that last portion. But let me see if I have data in Sumo Logic. Just to, oh, there we go. All right, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. What I wanted to do though is check to see if I have data. So like I did earlier, I want to go into my collection, and I should, if I do a search for Kubernetes-training, I should. Oh, good. There we are. So we are starting to see something in here. So here we're starting to see everything set up. So here's my training lab, my Kubernetes, and here are the metrics related to Kubernetes. It's still loading. As you see, there's no data. It's setting up it's setting up to prepare for data, but nothing has come in yet, but that's okay. All right, so let's see. So yeah, this is pretty good. What we want to do to finish this up is we can use our app, and it's still loading, but let's see. I should be good here. I think this should work. I should be able to now go to my app catalog, add to library. I don't have a source category defined. Let's see here. Let me see here. How are we doing? So we have our collection. We're going to refresh this. Stuff still coming in. Yeah, we should be good to go. Let me just run this one more time. Yeah, that's all right. Really. What I'm hoping to see is, like we see right here, I'm hoping to see some data actually come through. Right now, nothing's coming in. It's prepared, but it's not quite there yet. So I'm going to, in the meantime, what I'm going to do, let me just try this one more time. What I'm going to go ahead and do is use the Explorer view like we were using earlier, using it incorrectly earlier, but we were using it earlier, and see if I have things in there under Kubernetes. So what I'm going to do is go to plus new and explore. I'm going to go, and as we see here now, we're starting to see all that data that we were kind of promised earlier. But if I go to my Kubernetes, really any of the views, namespace view or node view, or really any of them should be fine. But let's do namespace view. I should see, there we go. I start to at least see the potential of data coming in here. So here's my training lab 0929. And here we go. We're starting to get some stuff in here. Not a ton of stuff, but we're this is a brand new instance of Kubernetes, but this is now where we would start to see our data. And I'm hoping you're seeing a little bit more data than I have. Yeah, it's not the most exemplary data, but it's data. Let's see. I just want to show some graph that's spiking or something kind of cool. It's still going, so I was being a little impatient. Region's ready. That already ran, so we should have, let me just do this one more time. We should have some data in here. All right, that's okay. I think we got kind of close enough. So where we should have arrived is now, as we showed earlier with AWS, now you're viewing Kubernetes data in Sumo Logic. And so did anybody else have a better experience in there? I'm hoping, because I know some of you were playing along, actually I hope many of you are, but did anybody successfully get Kubernetes data in Sumo Logic and actually have it show up? Somebody? Still taking a little while. All right, good, Jamie, thank you. So at least we're still in the process, so that's good. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to continue. Certainly would like yours to finish, and if you want to let it finish, of course, please do so. But just in the essence of time, just we gotta move on, sort of. So let's go ahead and move to lab number 3. And before we do, let me go back to my slide deck and just once again kind of set the table, if you will. So we talked about we talked about Kubernetes. We were hoping to see the collection in there. We did. We didn't quite see any data, or I didn't, but we got through it. Now we want to go ahead and talk about, to wrap things up with observability at a glance here, this chart we were using earlier, we want to talk about tracing. So we've seen how observability can help at the infrastructure and the platform level, but now, like I said, at the tracing level. And tracing is going to play a crucial role in tracking transactions of an app on a microservices-based architecture. So even a simple 3-tier application is going to have a load balancer, it's going to have some servers, it's going to have a database. And so what we need is a view into the app's environment. And so let's talk about setting up traces in Sumo Logic. So we're going to go ahead and utilize OpenTelemetry. Now, as a developer or an IT operator, a DevOps engineer, SRE, many of those roles, you're going to be responsible for the performance and health of applications that you build or operate. Several technology providers have created agents to collect telemetry data. However, OpenTelemetry is an open source observability framework. It's used to collect telemetry data, including logs, metrics, and traces from distributed systems in order to troubleshoot, debug, and manage applications and their host environments. It's going to provide a set of APIs or SDKs, libraries, and other tools that are going to help you standardize how you collect and transfer that telemetry data. You can collect telemetry data from cloud native applications and their supporting infrastructure to understand their performance and health. OpenTelemetry will provide a specification for instrumentation so that you can send data to distinct backends of your choice. And it's going to provide a wide range of ready-to-use componentry to get you started with distributed tracing. So that's hopefully answers the question of why OpenTelemetry. Now, installation is almost the same as it is for using the Sumo Logic Kubernetes collection, except the tracing flag is going to need to be enabled. So the process that we're going to follow is going to use a Helm chart to set all required components and then automatically download and configure the OpenTelemetry collector, which will collect, process, and export that telemetry data to Sumo Logic. And so there's two deployment scenarios as we see here. A single OpenTelemetry collector gateway for all the nodes, and or running OpenTelemetry collector agents on each node and OpenTelemetry collector gateway. So two options for you. I'm going to go into those options a little bit more here. So in that first scenario, where a single OpenTelemetry collector is being used, all the trace data from our services is sent directly to a single OpenTelemetry collector service running as a deployment and acting as a gateway. The single OpenTelemetry gateway is preferred when either you're planning to test the process or you have an environment with a relatively low number of pods, easy for me to say less than 100, or just a single host. And that's the setup we're going to utilize for today. So we're going to utilize that idea of that first scenario, the single collector. Setting up trace for collection. So tracing is going to require Sumo Logic Kubernetes Collection 2.0. After installing or upgrading your Kubernetes collector, you'll be able to send traces directly to the endpoint using Yager, Zipkin, OpenTelemetry formats. In this session, though, we're going to use OpenTelemetry to ingest the trace data. Traces will be enhanced with Kubernetes metadata, similar to the logs and metrics collected by the collector. We're going to see how to send traces to OpenTelemetry formats. We're kind of starting to see it already, but we're going to go through these steps in the lab. Tracing is disabled by default, and so we do need to go ahead and enable tracing as just described using this Helm upgrade. And so that should be a step in the lab. Let me go ahead and make sure. Yeah, it is. So let's go ahead and let me just see. I think I have one more slide here. Nope. Yeah, we can go straight into the labs now. Actually, let's go ahead. Let's go do a few more slides here. Let's talk about viewing traces in Kubernetes. I should do those first. A couple more slides, then we'll get back into the lab. I'm just eager to do those. So we wanted to just go through the process of setting up the traces for the Kubernetes environment. Now we'll go ahead and take a look at service maps in a little bit. Actually, I can go ahead and just go through these now. Yeah, let me just, let's take a look at some of this now. I showed some of this earlier when I was kind of tap dancing a little bit, but let's go back into it. So what I wanted to show first are service maps, and then I just want to see my data's here. No, oh yeah, there it is. Yay, data. Cool, I got something. Let me just go ahead and let me go back to my Explorer. I just want to see. I want to see my data. All right, let me just do a refresh real fast. So going into new, going to explore, Kubernetes, doesn't really matter for right now. I just want to see data. Let me try the node view, see if that does help. No, all right, that's okay. There we go. All right, I got something here. All right, there we go. I got some proof that something is being ingested into Sumo Logic. So here we're seeing some CPU utilization, some node issues. So maybe not the most valuable information, although for the right use case, it certainly is, but we're starting to see that come in. So since I set that up, we're starting to see system load and CPU usage and inode usage and all that other stuff. So I know that was the Kubernetes discussion, but I just got excited for a moment there. So it's good to see that's in there. And that's what we wanted to show was that explore by. So actually the service maps, I'm sorry, so much to show. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to go to new and service map. And just give you a visual here. We're not going to go too deep into service maps, but as you start to set up your trace points and link the trace data into Sumo Logic, you can start to utilize these service maps. This service map is a high-level view of our application or your application environment, and it's automatically being built from the tracing data in real time as it arrives into Sumo Logic. This example here that you see on the screen we use for our Sumo Logic Coffee example, but we have the idea of things are going on. Things in red are not going on very well. There's an issue, and we can start to dig into that. So service maps are a great way to dynamically see your tracing data in a high-level view. Here we have it. It's kind of cool. The service dashboards. So we went through these kind of sort of quickly, but these allow us to look at different views and explore them. I guess that's oversimplification of the name, but that's kind of what it allows you to do. So we can explore by Kubernetes, we can explore by AWS. As I mentioned earlier, real user monitoring or RUM, that's a different class. But we have the ability to start to view by these different services, or just different views rather, excuse me. Let's see. Let's go straight into let's dig into the tracing portion now. Let's dive in there together. So once again, as I did earlier, we have some kind of, I guess, I don't want to say they're warnings necessarily, but in regards to tracing setup within OpenTelemetry, just some kind of tips, I guess you could call them. Keep jumping. So due to the fact that vital metadata is available only with installed collector, we recommend that instances of OpenTelemetry collectors be run at least on each node as an agent. And doing so is going to allow you to collect those metadata tags locally, buffer the messages, and as a result, reduce the number of requests to the collector instance. So you have the option of choosing the right deployment, and today we're going to kind of point you towards one, but you do have those decisions to make. And that's going to be a common decision with deployment throughout Sumo Logic. How are you going to bring your data in? Usually a few different ways to handle it. All right, let's go ahead and do the lab activity now. So we're going to do lab 3. As before, lots of little steps in here, but we're going to go through them together. So hopefully you have your lab guide sort of handy. We're going to go ahead and enable tracing. So we're going to go ahead and utilize the query, not the query, but the command in lab 3, step 1 to enable tracing. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that in here. And I do need to put in the access ID and keys. So I do, let's see, I'm just going to kind of copy and paste them. I think that's probably the easiest way to handle this. So we got our access ID right there. So we're going to go ahead and specify a series of characters. We're going to go ahead and grab our key. And we can grab this from the Sumo Logic environment as well. I'm just trying to save a little step here. So I'm going to put that that access key now. I already have the ID, so access key. And then I'm going to go ahead and specify the cluster name. So I'm going to go ahead and once again use, as I've been doing, my initials with just a number since I've done this before. So I'm going to use JB0929 again. I'll throw a 1 in there just to make it a little bit unique. And I'm going to hit enter. And if all goes well, I should get nothing. In a good way, I should get just another command line. Is it still going? What's it doing? Try this again. It's just kind of staring at me. That all looks okay. That all looks, yeah, I think that should be okay. Oh, there we go. Oh, another, okay, so I do have 2 going on at the same time. So I was a little too eager there. So this one is doing what it needs to do, which is good. So now I've enabled tracing. We want to go ahead and now go ahead and look at, yeah, we should, let me just see what happened here. Yeah, okay, it worked out well, good. So what I'm going to do now is go to the visualization. So as it says, I want to go ahead and log into the Sumo UI or still be logged into it. I want to go to collection again. So I want to go to manage data on the black bar. And I want to go to collection. And I should be in the collection screen already. What I want to do here is I want to search for that cluster name that I just created. So that K8-training -lab I think I did JB09291. And what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and delete this cluster. So what I want to do now is I want to make sure that this is in here, and it is. And now I want to go ahead and run the step 3 to delete the cluster. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab those steps, paste them in, modify my lab name. So once again, using that training-lab-jb0929, and I've added a 1 in there for some reason previously. And now I'm going to run that to delete the cluster. Lab JB09291. Why didn't that work? Oh, there we go. It's just the 09. Okay. Now we can go into lab 3B, and now we can start to set up the exercise, set up OpenTelemetry, and we're going to utilize utilize an EC2 instance. So what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and log back into AWS. This is once again kind of assuming you have an AWS account. So I'm going to go ahead and I don't think my AWS is still open here. No, of course not. Let me go ahead and get back into it. No, that's not what I wanted. There we go. So now I'm logged back into my AWS account. I want to go specifically to my EC2s. So I want to go ahead and go to services and go to EC2. And what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and select an EC2, but we have an image or an AMI, we have an AMI rather, excuse me, that we want you to utilize. So under EC2s, we're going to go down to the far left to AMIs. And what we should be able to do is select public images. So we have our we're going into the AMIs. There we go. I need a new AMI. Let's see. Oh. I'm going to go ahead and look for public images. So using this pull down, I'm going to select public images because we have a public image that you can utilize. And you should see that located in the lab based on which region you're utilizing. So if you're in a specific region, go ahead and utilize that server or that AMI, excuse me. So I am in US East 1, so I'm going to use that first AMI of 076C. So I'm going to copy that, paste it in, hit enter, cross my fingers, and there's the AMI that I want to utilize. So go ahead and find the AMI that's appropriate to you. Probably going to be the US East 1 as well, but that's really not a very good guess. It could be, depending on where you are regionally, it might be different. But go ahead and select one, and then click launch. So here is our EC2. We're going to AMI, well, EC2 AMI. We're going to make sure that we're checked, and we're going to click launch. Now we're going to go ahead and utilize the steps here. So we are going ahead and we are creating an instance. So we are going to use a T2 large today, which is going to utilize some resources. So just want to mention that it should be, not very expensive for you, but it is going to utilize some resources. So just want to be transparent. So we're going to go to the T2 large and just click the checkbox next to it, or the checkbox. We're going to go to the bottom right and click next for configure instance details. We don't actually need to do anything on the screen, just that's kind of the next step. But we could if we wanted to, but once again, we're not going to. We can click next on add storage. We don't need to do anything there. We can keep the defaults for add storage. But what we do want to do is the next one for next add tags. We do want to add a tag. So the tag we want to add, like it says, just something that might be valuable, but the example it provides is sufficient. So I'm going to go ahead and add a tag. The key, I'm going to make the name, and then the value of the key or for this tag is going to be my OpenTelemetry lab. And I'm actually going to do my OpenTelemetry Lab 2.9 just to keep my kind of confusing naming convention going. Next, we're going to click on Configure Security Group. Now, by default, port 22 should be added for SSHing. It should already be there, but we do want to add, as it says in the lab, an additional port for port 8080. So what we want to do here, excuse me, is just really mimic the first line. So we're going to click Add Rule. We're going to select the custom option, so or leave it as custom TCP. It should be the option by default. The protocol we're going to leave as TCP. The port range we're going to put as 8080, so 280s in there. And then for the source, we're going to change that from custom to your IP. I'm going to leave it a custom for right now, just because I'm okay with leaving mine a little bit open. But in security world, you probably shouldn't. So I'm going to leave it as is just for now. And once I have that configured the way I'd like, I'm going to go ahead and actually let me put in, let's see. Yeah, I'm just going to do anywhere. I think that just internal issue with some VPN access. So I'm going to go click Review and Launch. And now it's going to, well, review everything. So here we see what we're setting up. So T2 large, we're setting up those TCP rules. We're using the AMI, and we're going to click Launch. So here we need to go ahead, and it depends if we're really if we've done this before. So if you currently have a key pair that you're using for the AMIs, for rather AWS, excuse me, go ahead and utilize those. You may need to create a new pair. That's just really yeah, it's just more of a almost like a personal setting. So I should be okay with selecting my key pair that I have already. That should still work. I think I still have my key in there. So I'm going to launch the instance, and I'm going to assume this works. So let's see, let's launch the instance. And so now the instance is launching. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and go back to services and go back to EC2. And what we should see is our service up and running. So here we see that my OpenTelemetry Lab 29, the other ones are old. And I see it's pending, but it's starting to chug along there, which is great. Now what we want to go ahead and do, and it should, once it's set to running, that we should be good to go. Okay, so let me pause. Any questions? Hope this is making sense, really just going through the lab guide with this, but we are. So, but any questions, of course, go ahead and ask. So now we have this EC2 instance running. Now we need to connect to it. So what we're going to do is connect to it. So we're going to go ahead and click the checkbox next to my OpenTelemetry Lab, in this case, my Lab 29, and I'm going to click Connect on the top of the screen. What it's now going to provide to me, and what we're going to utilize, is the SSH client to go ahead and SSH through terminal into this instance. So this instance is now up and running in US East 1, so somewhere in North Virginia, a server stood up for me, and now I want to go ahead and access it through terminal. And so I'm going to do, especially if I have not done these steps before, I'm going to want to do step 3 and step 4. So what we're going to do here is we're going to want to make sure that we do a chmod for our key, and you may not need to do this. And then we want to go ahead and connect. So what I want to do now is I should be able to take this example, paste it in, and fingers crossed, I am now, I am now, let me see, did it connect? Oh, it's not like in my AMI. Where is that AMI? Oh, CH1. Where did I put it? There we go. Okay, cool. I found it. And now if I run this CSA, SSH, it still should work, even if it is saying login as it should work as root anyhow, but let me go ahead and modify it to EC2 user. What is it not
Go
liking?
back to your downloads directory.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for that. And so in this case, I need to run an update, but probably won't. Yeah, I mean, I guess I might as well. Well, it's just we're in here. Let's might as well run the little update. Should be pretty quick. So now what we've done is we've now connected to our EC2. So now in this terminal window, I am now connected to it, which, this should not be new to you from a technological standpoint. I'm sure you're familiar with SSHing and, jumping into other servers. Yeah, probably that update was probably overkill. All right, I'm going to just do no. I don't really want to sit through that update. All right, so we have our key, we have our logged in. Now what we're going to do is once we're connected to the EC2 instance, and this is going to be step 7 in our lab guide, we're going to do a CD bin. And then we're going to go ahead and start Tomcat. So to start Tomcat, we're going to do ./startup.sh. No, hold on.
Josh, you need to go to Tomcat directory.
Yeah. Thank you. Isn't it called? Oh, it's Apache Tomcat, right?
Yep. I just hit tab.
Yeah, it's not pulling up in there.
Do an ls then. You're in bin. Get back out of bin. Go back.
Oh yeah, why did I go to bin? I don't know why I did.
You're still in bin.
Yeah. So then let me do this again.
Yeah. I suggest, okay.
All right, now do a patch.
LS.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you, John.
No. Now go to bin.
Now do CD bin.
Now you change CD bin. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry. And now if I do the startup script.
Yeah.
Where did it go? There it is. All right. Cool. All right. Thank you, John. That's one of the reasons you're here, is to help with that. So thank you again for that. Cool. Okay, so now we have our Tomcat started up. We can verify that it's working correctly, like we have in step 8. Might as well. Guess can't really hurt. Although I guess it did right there. Why did that not run? Why did that curl not work? Why did that curl not work? Let's see. I think my VPN is being a little funky here and starting to impact me. So let me try turning that off. And let me try this again. There we go. Okay, cool. So my VPN was messing me up. So now I get, as it shows in that screenshot, my Tomcat is running properly. And now we can go ahead and in step 9, we can go ahead and shut down Tomcat and make some configuration changes. Cool. All right, so we made it through, ideally, through steps or sections A and B of that lab. And now we have still got a little more here, but got some more, but let's go ahead and get through it. So in step C, what we want to now do is prepare the collector gateway to receive those spans and traces. So to do so, we're going to go ahead and follow the steps here. So we're going to go back into Sumo Logic and go back to the collection screen. If we have it already open, great. If not, we're going to go to the far left, go to Manage Data, and go to Collection. Now we're going to add a new collector. So on the top right, we're going to add collector. The type of collector we're going to use for today is a hosted collector. So we're going to select hosted collector. For the name, we provide kind of a naming convention that we want you to utilize. So it really doesn't matter too much. I'm going to use, I'll do a JB0929, I don't know, collector. Make it easy enough for me to find it later. Once I have this in here, I can modify things like time zone, but for now, we really don't need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now I should have the ability to add a data source. Assuming I get this box, I'm going to click OK. And now I need to choose what type of data source do I want to utilize. There's a lot of different ones in here, but for today's conversation, since we're talking about tracing, we want to utilize the HTTP traces. So we want to go ahead and click on that, that box that says HTTP traces. We're going to fill in the blanks here. So we're going to go ahead and it gives some names. Let's see. So we're going to call it, probably using the names that we have already is good. So I'm going to use JB0929 again. Dash traces, I guess. Now we do want to go ahead and specify the source category here. So what we want to do here is for the source category, we want to use lab/Apache/star. And we can use any source category. I just want to use something that you may have used in other classes before with us. Now, when I click save, what I'm going to get, or what I should get, is a URL. And so we want to make sure that we have that URL sort of safe. So go ahead and copy it to a notepad or just some, like I said, someplace kind of safe. So make sure everybody has that. Go ahead and click OK. Now we're going to go to step 2 of this this portion of the lab of C, which is going to be creating or utilizing the YAML file. So as it says in the lab, the config YAML is already created for you, but we will need to edit the YAML file to update the URL with the correct one that we just got. So what we're going to do is in step 2, we're going to jump all the way down to step 5. Now we're going to need to use VI, or your favorite text editor. It doesn't have to be VI, I guess. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and in our EC2 instance, we're going to do a VI config.yaml.
I think you want to go to the root directory.
Yeah. Thanks. VI config.yaml. There we go. Now we're in the wonderful world of VI. And so what we want to do is we want to look for the portion that says traces endpoint. And we want to go ahead and make sure that we place our URL in there. And we actually have, it's good. We have steps in there on how to use some of VI, which for those of you not familiar, these help a lot. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make sure, as it says, that I have a space between the endpoint and the code that we paste in. So let me get my space. Insert space. Now I'm forgetting my VI.
Shift insert.
Just shift. Okay. Because I should be create a space
Shift
first.
I. I'm sorry. Shift I. Sorry.
Yeah.
Shift I. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. It's been a long time. And then do a paste, so Shift V or whatever it might be. Now that I have that pasted in, now I can do an escape. Now I can do the wonderful terminology of :WQ to save and quit. And now I've exited the editor. So now we're going to move on to step 3 of the lab guide. So I know we're doing a lot, but we're doing pretty good on time as well. So Yeah, we're doing good. So now in step 3, we're going to prepare the OpenTelemetry collector binaries and run them. Now, once again, we've done these steps for you, so they're here for reference, but we're going to skip over them. But what we would have to do, or would be done, is downloading the executable from our GitHub, launching it. But once again, we're just skipping these steps. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to step 3, step 6, which the verbiage is kind of confusing. So step 3, Roman numerals, step 6, Arabic numbers. So in step 6, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and start the collector using our configuration file. So I'm going to copy this portion that ends with config.yaml and paste it in and hit enter. It's going to do its magic. And what we can do now is we can go ahead and open an additional tab and run our SSH into that EC2 instance as well. So this thing is running now, but it's just going to keep running. So what I want to do is I want to open a new tab, or I fortunately have my my old tab open, and I'm going to go ahead and now SSH back into that device. And once again, yeah, it still has me as root. I'll just wait till it dies. There we go. So let me change that back to EC2-user. EC2-user. Yeah, okay, so now I'm back. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I have my config YAML file running, that configuration file. And on the left-hand side, I have a new, or well, new to me, SSH window for my EC2 instance. All right, now what we wanted to do, or a lot of this is going to be done for us again, but is the instrumentation of Tomcat. Now, these have been completed as well, so I'm really just going to kind of skip them, just in transparency, just in transparency, just run through them. So for D of this exercise, I'm going to skip down to step 14. And I don't even really need to do step 14. I guess I should. What it allows us to do is do a PS command to, as it says, inspect the Java command to make sure everything is running properly. I guess I should do that. And it is, so that's good to see. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and utilize the in steps 16 and 17, I want to change my directory to that Apache bin directory. So like I was trying to do earlier. So cd apache -tomcat /bin. And now finally, what I want to do is run this cp set envi, or set environment SSH command. I'm going to grab that, paste that in, cross my fingers.
Don't forget the period at the end of.
Yes. What I didn't like about that.
Right. Space before the period. So
there is a space in there.
Space
Okay.
and then a period. There you go.
Cool. Thanks,
There
Chuck.
you go.
All right. So that ran. It didn't, kind of a silent command, but it did run. All right. So now what we want to do, and as it says in the lab, let's review what we've done, because we just did a whole lot. So what we did is we set up our standalone EC2 instance. We, although it was already done for us, installed Java, installed Tomcat. We made sure Tomcat is operational. We prepared the collector gateway, and so that's where we set up that collector and got that URL. And then we instrumented Tomcat for tracing. Now what we want to do is we should be able to continue here and start to review, as it says, those traces and spans in Sumo Logic. So let's do so. So we're going to go first to manage data and collection once again. I just want to make sure my stuff is in there. So I'm going to look for my JV 0929. And what I'm specifically looking for is this one right here. These other ones are ones we were playing with earlier, but this is the one that's kind of interest to me.
Hi, Josh.
Yes.
I don't think your Java agent is running. If you do the ps -ef, it's not really running. You may need to.
Josh, you need to restart your Apache server.
Yeah.
And then it will pick up that set environment variable that you copied over.
Yeah.
And then then your agent will be running.
Thank you. I thought I did, but I did not. So let's
Just go in your bin directory and restart your Apache. You should be fine.
okay. And so what's the best way to run it? Just startup? Do shutdown or?
No, your /startup.sh. Sorry, /
Yeah.
start the shell.
Yeah, my mine is rusty. Okay, so we got that. And so that should be good now. Let's see.
Yep. And now let's create some data.
Okay,
So if you
let's
go
make
out to the
sure.
Apache website and click around, it should start creating some data that you'll see in your service map.
Go to where? I'm sorry.
Use your IAM connection screen to get the host name or the IP address and port 8080. And then you can go from your web browser to that system, to that Apache server, and then you can see the page, or page will load, click on a couple of buttons, get some data, and you'll see that then in Sumo.
Okay, so if we go to new and traces, we should start to see some stuff in there then, right?
No, not until we get some data there. We need to go to that web server and click on stuff to make.
Oh, I got you. Okay. What's the address?
Where's your IAM panel?
Yeah,
Your
let me
connect to where it says connect to your environment up there, that tab on your web browser to the right. There you go, right there.
there we go.
There you go. Click on that button 4 there, or item 4, that URL. That's the host name. And then put a :8080 at the end of it.
Oh, I got you. I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you, John.
No problem.
Anybody else that's following?
I know what it's like doing this live.
I know you do. So
with you.
you're sympathetic. There we go. Okay.
Click around.
now-
click on
so
some
now-
buttons there.
There we go. Yeah. So what we're
Click on
doing is
those, gray buttons, please. So you get some failures.
okay.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you, John.
And the other issue is you got to wait a few minutes for the
Okay.
data to show, but
But that
that's
should
it.
be good enough. So now if we go back into our collection, we should start to see some stuff in there. And if we go into our traces, let's see, what would we need to do here? To show up in traces, we need to, oh, here we go. We're starting to see some stuff down here.
You can filter it if you want for Sumo training.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I was hoping just-
Or you can go to the service map first and then click on traces from there.
Yeah, let's start the service map view. So here we see some of the traces taking place. Let's see, where are hours? So these are hours over. No, that's not hours. Oh,
Nope,
here's
there you
Sumo
go,
training.
right there.
There we go. There it is. All right, so still kind of quiet in there. And here we're starting to see those traces. So what we're now finally seeing, thank you, John, is those links or what was being clicked on or accessed within the website. And so here were those references to those 403s that we saw or didn't see when we got this access denied. Now it's starting to show up in Sumo Logic, and now we can start to utilize that and detect it. So cool. All right. That kind of concludes the lab guide, I believe. Let me see. Yeah. So let's go back to our slide deck, and certainly any questions, go ahead and ask. Time-wise, we're still okay. We're not too bad on time. We're going to have you out of here earlier than the schedule said anyhow. So, but let me just go back to my deck and just kind of wrap things up. And thank you for, thank you, John, certainly, but thank you, everybody. I know that it got a little bumpy in there, but we made it through. We got the data, so I feel good. I don't have to take an exam on this in a few minutes, but that's neither here nor there. So let's just wrap up with our summary here. So in summary, observability solution can help you observe information at a higher level and observe the application infrastructure. It's going to help next level to monitor what's integrated with Kubernetes. It's going to help you track and drill down into details by setting up the trace points for a modern web app. The Sumo Logic observability solution provides the framework to simplify the monitoring and troubleshooting of a stack, minimize the time taken to get operational and security insights, identify elements that are subject to specific operational issues or security threats and vulnerabilities, Sumo Logic provides the cloud formation template to deploy the AWS observability solution, as we saw that. Using that cloud formation template, we can declare the AWS resources we want to create and configure. We can get rid of the JSON and the YAML files of creating those and managing them. The template automatically, as we saw, sets up the automated collection of the logs and metrics from AWS to Sumo Logic and installs those out-of-the-box dashboards in Sumo Logic. We saw how Sumo Logic provides native integrations with best practice data sources for Kubernetes. We saw the easy or semi-easy setup collection deploying using Helm and getting that instant access to those metrics, those logs, those traces, those security events, other just Kubernetes data. And so using Kubernetes setup, we were able to set up and instrument our application utilizing OpenTelemetry and set up those tracing points for the app. So we were a little bit all over the place, but all under the umbrella of observability. As far as the next steps, so certainly taking the certification that you're going to do in a moment will be one of the next steps. But we also offer a periodically, not always, but a SDO, a software development optimization training. And so we'd encourage you to take that workshop to help you increase the release speed, the improve reliability, help you comprehensively monitor your software development pipelines. So wanted to give that as a kind of another next step. For other more next steps, we're going to be offering more of these training sessions. So over the past 2 days with Illuminate, sorry, I was going to try and paste that link in. You've participated in hopefully some learning and gotten some certifications, but we're going to be doing this again. So we want to give you the ability to join us in October. So let me paste that link in to sign up for some of those classes. Cool. All right, finally, certainly thank you for attending, but what we want to do now is we want to go over the Sumo Logic certification exam and kind of get you set up for that. So if there's questions about the content, please ask, but I'm going to go ahead and start to get into that exam for everybody. So for the exam, it's going to be imperative that you don't take the exam as training admin 941, that you take the exam as Bob or Bill or Jennifer or your personal account. So hopefully, I'm kind of assuming, but everybody should have their own personal or professional or corporate Sumo account. So make sure you log in with that. Once you've logged in with that set of credentials, by default, you'll be on the home screen, which you should be familiar with. If it's your own personal account, you've probably been in there before. And I'm hoping you've already been in the certification before, but if you haven't, let's show you how to get to it. At the top of the screen, you'll go to certification on the home screen, and you'll click Get Certified. The system is going to open up into the Learn portal, and we're going to go to the course or it's really the course or the knowledge group we were in today. And today we were talking about observability. So we're going to go down to observability. And we're going to select the observability administration exam. Like with all of our other exams, you're going to want to register. You're going to want to read the little blurb, and then you're going to start to take the exam. The exam, like our others, consists of about 20 questions. You'll have 60 minutes to take it. You won't need all that time, but it will be allocated to you, so don't feel rushed. Also doing a good question, you will earn the Uber Eats coupon here as well. So once you're done with the exam and you pass it, go ahead and send that certification to training@sumologic.com, and we'll go ahead and get you that Uber Eats coupon within a few days. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely, you've earned that. So when you take the exam, just one step here that if you haven't taken one with us, you might not be familiar with. You'll take the exam, you'll start it, you'll do great, you'll answer all these questions, you'll submit your answers. Once you're done, you'll get your score, and hopefully it's going to be better than mine here. It's important that you click on the submit results, because if you do not, you will not get credit for the exam. It's kind of a weird, it's not Sumo Logic behavior, it's our learning portal behavior, but it's important that you do click that button to get full credit for it. Outside of that, I'm probably just going to stop talking and let you take the exam. So certainly if there's any questions getting into the exam, let me know. Any questions not related to what we discussed, that's fine too. But otherwise, yeah, good luck on the exam. Let's take it now. Let's do well. And, thank you for joining today. Thank you for joining during Illuminate. There's still some other sessions going on, so you might be able to participate later this evening. But thank you for participating. It's been fun. I've enjoyed it myself. So once again, let's start the exam, and I'm going to throw myself on mute. So I'll just do the steps one last time, and then I'll do mute just in case. So once again, log in, go to certification, get certified. And here I should point this out is where we keep the credentials. So when we use those training plus analyst, training plus admin accounts, this is where you can go to check the latest credentials. You can email us as well at training@sumologic.com, but this is easier for both of us. So feel free to email us, of course. Then we're going down to observability. And we're selecting that observability administration exam. I hope you had a chance to take the fundamentals class and exam prior to this. If you didn't, that's fine. They're different, but for today we are doing admin exam. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put myself on mute. We're going to look after you for a little bit. I'm going to step away and just get another beverage. But then we're going to, we'll be here for a little bit. And so any questions, go ahead and ask. Send those emails to training@sumologic.com with your certificate. Get that free meal on us. And once again, just thank you for attending. Thank you for my helpers. Thank you, Tram. Thank you, John, for getting us through this. A little bumpy here and there, but we did make it through, and I'm pretty pleased with that. So, all right, thank you again, and good luck on the exam.